doing the countdown and we'll get going. Marty should be in any time. And Vicky won't be able to join us. Oh, okay. Okay.
I don't have to take a picture. My friends aren't going to believe this.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Vicky will not be joining us. Marty, we should sign in any minute. Are there any disclosures of conflict of interest for items on the agenda? Seeing none, adoption of the minutes, LaSalle Police Services Board Committee and public meetings held September 14th, 2020 be adopted as presented. Moved by Mr. Allen, seconded by Mrs. Malash. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. So the first item on the agenda is LaSalle Police Service 2021 budget proposal. Chief, do you want to talk about your budget?
Yeah, I have a few comments to make on it. This is a very straightforward submission, a request for several items here. I think what's important to know and really understand is how busy we have become in the last year. Obviously, the most primary thing that I'm looking for support from the board is frontline boots. 1 year ago at this time, we had 9,500 calls for service. Today at this time, I have 15,500 calls for service. That's not good with the numbers we have. When you look at the calls for service and demands being placed upon us, I don't want COVID to obscure what I have to say, because COVID is, I think as we reported in the last meeting, is probably responsible for 3 or 4 calls a week. The last time we'd added officers to this organization was 11 years ago. Quite frankly, that's absurd. 11 years ago. 11 years ago, we had a population of 23,000 people. My concern, our senior team concern is this. We have 4 people working, and we can't, and too many hours of that 12-hour shift, we only have at most times 2 officers available to address calls. And that's because if you have a mental health issue, a domestic issue, a sexual assault involving a child, an overdose, we lose 2 of those 4. Or they have to go to the hospital to admit somebody or apprehend somebody under the Mental Health Act. And so now we're left with 2 officers, sometimes 1, to patrol a community of 33,000 people. By having the ultimate, I mean, in the perfect world, you're going to see how concerned that I am. And next year, and I won't be here next year, but next year I would probably think that the new senior team is going to ask you for 1 more person. And that 1 more person will solidify that additional frontline officer per platoon. You got to remember, we only have 7 officers per platoon times 4. But right now we always have 2 officers off. We have 2 officers that are away in London for 3 weeks on a priority training course. So now we're left with 6 officers. The minimums that we have is 4. We can't raise it to 5 because we don't have the depth. So some of these calls for service are 911 calls or emergency level priority calls. Should something happen where we do not have sufficient backup, sufficient officers to support a firefight or an issue, I cannot defend it. I can't. But you can. You can do this today. And these other areas, we're getting calls from, the waterways. I don't have people to put on the waterways. Are there a lot of people that are upset with us over the lack or absence of patrol? Yeah, there is. And I don't blame them. But when I have 4 people working and I put 2 people on the boat, we have an issue in town. I got nobody left. I have nobody left. Also, we have been getting calls from the agricultural community with respect to coming out there. We have trained ATV operators, but I can't get them out there because most days, most shifts, the majority of them, I only have 4 people. So I'm here just to talk about one thing, and that's adding frontline people. And certainly the is risk mitigation. I mean, think about it, folks. 11 years. It really needs to be addressed. It has to be addressed. The other area, I'm going to have Kevin speak a little bit before I go on to the next thing, if you don't mind. I want Kevin to speak a little bit about this jump in calls for service that we're doing. Just a couple minutes to kind of drill down a little bit so you can certainly be more informed about what's going on with our calls for service.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Thank you, Chief.
Here,
Good morning, Your Worship, and the board. Just some areas that as the Chief said, are calls for service, and I verified this morning. 9527, October the 2nd, 2019 was where we were at. This morning, October 2nd, 2020, 15,157. We have not changed the way we measure our stats. This is just year over year, and I can certainly speak to month over month if you need me to. But just to highlight some of the areas that we've seen an increase in: child custody disputes, domestic disputes, driving complaints, neighbor disputes. These are all, and of course, mental health calls for service. As the Chief indicated, a mental health apprehension. And we're getting more and more of them. We'll tie up 2 officers for anywhere between 2 hours to 5 hours once we get them to the hospital. We can't just show up at the hospital and drop them off. The Mental Health Act states that we have to wait until the hospital takes custody of them. And after they go through triage and what have you, oftentimes we have to wait until they actually are seen by a physician, who can then make the assessment based on the grounds that we presented, the triage nurse, and anyone else that perhaps a family member that can shed some light on it. So again, this is out of our control. I think the other important thing to highlight is that the Chief and I are asking for an increase in frontline staffing. we don't ask for this sort of willy-nilly. We conduct ongoing organizational reviews. We do this to optimize efficiencies, look at our service delivery, our resource allocation, and including civilianizing positions, which we've done. Since 2019, we've looked at areas and we said, you know what, we're going to take a frontline officer who's spending part of his time doing this job. For example, our procurement team, quartermaster, property control. These are all areas that are just, we have looked at it and been creative and said, we're going to move civilians into these positions to allow us to put more people on the streets. And we still don't have enough. So I think it's important that the board understands that we just don't dream this up. The chief, as the chief indicated, 2009 was the last time we added to complement, and our population has increased tremendously since that point. So I'm happy to take questions on this. If there's any other clarification the board requires, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, I don't know if the chief said he wanted to talk again about something else or more to this. So I didn't know if we'll take questions after,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Just briefly, obviously like a long time ago, I don't know, like 17 or 18 years ago, the board has a policy in place with respect to vehicle replacement on a two-car annual basis. We didn't do that last year. If we continue to go down that path, if we, what inevitably happens, and it did happen 15, 16 years ago, is the fleet all of a sudden becomes old. We're just not logging on 20,000 miles a year. Our cars last 3 years. So at the end of the 3-year mark, they're looking at anywhere between 160 and 200,000 kilometers. You take one vehicle out of the fleet. It's not that we have an abundance of fleets or abundance of vehicles within the fleet, but that's something I can't touch it again, because we're only getting 2 vehicles a year. So, and some of these vehicles are on the road 24/7. I mean, so, and there's always the safety thing of the mechanics of the vehicle. Once they get up to 150, 180,000 kilometers and this, that, the next thing. So I think we have to stay on that 2 vehicle a year policy. So the cost for maintenance, safety of the vehicle on the road, and so on. And the last thing, Your Worship, is of course we finally got a quote a couple of weeks ago on the NG 911.
Revised quote. A revised quote.
I'm sorry, yeah, a revised quote. So the revised quote came in considerably less than what we anticipated 2 years ago. Now, because of COVID and all this stuff, they're still pushing it back. This is, we're going to be full board on this in the new year, or at least starting into it. And then we're going to amortize those costs over the next 3 years. So that's all I have to say. So you've got the additional vehicle as compared to last year. If you remember last year, I cut a vehicle to get under a certain percentage, and now you've got the reserves for the NG 911 and the request for the additional frontline officers. I think I'll just say one last thing. When the new executive leadership team commences next year, the last thing the new leadership team needs is the problem of lack of frontline people. I think that if the board would just recognize that your new leadership team can go on with the resources necessary to meet all these areas. And you might say, well, again, how does one officer per platoon change? We have 4 platoons. We have a very young service, excluding me, but we have a very young service. A lot of young people, a lot of families to commence in the next few years. People are off for this, people are off for that. So I can't stress the importance for your new leadership team to not have to worry about frontline resourcing. We're prepared to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay, thanks, Chief and Deputy Chief, for your comments. I can see your eyes, Marty. That's it. Welcome, Vicky. So I don't know if you can lower your screen a bit. Or that's better. Okay.
You really want to see me this morning?
Well, if you have questions, yes, and if you put your hand up, I won't be able to see it. So, okay, so I'll open it up to the board. Any questions before I give you mine?
I don't have any at this time.
Okay. I know you and Vicky got in late on some of the comments the chief and the deputy chief made, but Mr. Allen, Mrs. Malash, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to Chief. Just a few questions. When you were talking about the vehicles, so I'm looking at our 2021 requested budget, and it's requesting 110,000. And last year it was 45. Sorry, my phone's going off here. There we go. So I heard you say something about 2 vehicles. Last year we only did, well, really not even 1 vehicle. How does that work?
And check the late and how much were we over budget last year?
I think it was 90.
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor. Just wait a second. How do I turn this volume up, Kevin?
You got it. You should have speakers. But,
How do I?
sorry,
Sorry,
I adjust the volume.
Not only am I old, I'm deaf.
No.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, Crystal. Can you repeat that, please?
No problem. So on page 14, you guys speak about transfer to capital for vehicles.
Right,
So last year's approved budget was 45,000.
right,
This year you're asking for 110.
right.
You changed the policy last year because 45, from what you just said, doesn't even cover 1 vehicle.
No, the policy is to purchase 2 vehicles on an annual basis to keep the fleet kind of going, taking the last 2 out, putting 2 fresh ones in. 1 vehicle was cut last year.
Okay.
The cost of the vehicle. So a vehicle. So what we're seeing is now is the sort of the all-purpose vehicle, the SUV vehicle for us, which we are, kind of rural farmland, in town, size of officers, the availability of the room to have the in-car computers, and when they rack their assault rifles behind them, there's just a little bit more room. So the cost now is closer to about 48, and then we got to address these vehicles. Got to put all the emergency equipment, the lights, the logos, the this and the that, and usually that's about $12,000 in addition to the purchase of the vehicle.
Okay. So right now,
Yes.
that's being transferred to capital. Where does our capital sit right now for purchase of vehicles alone?
That's just vehicles.
Right. Do we have a large reserve right now for our vehicles?
Do we have a reserve for vehicles?
Yeah, like what's our reserve at right now?
We've never had a reserve.
Never?
Never. Any monies that was left over at the end of budget years was turned back into turned back to the town coffers.
So every year we're talking about vehicles. Obviously last year it was 40-something thousand. That didn't even cover the cost of the purchase of the vehicle. So where did that money go?
To buy a vehicle.
But it was only 45,000. It wouldn't have been enough. Do we pull from somewhere else?
We only bought one vehicle last year. We didn't buy two. We just bought one, and it was a car, it wasn't an SUV. So cars are considerably less. Cars
Okay.
are maybe $32,000 or 33. Then you add in your, by the time you dress it up, it's another $12,000 or so.
Okay. So
Chris,
maybe,
let me jump in here. Maybe I can help. What happened last year is they took money out of the budget for car allowance, where the practice should be leave it in every year. And if you don't buy a car next year, you have reserve, to your point, for the car next year. So from a budgeting point, it's probably better just to keep it in every year. So we do have that reserve when we need it. So that last year, I think, was an anomaly.
okay. Yeah, that might be something we would definitely want to consider going forward. My next question quickly about hydro on page 12. So you're saying right now a 5.7 decrease in hydro, which I don't know if that's realistic or not. I just want to be sure at the end of the day, when we look at our numbers, we're not lowering them, trying to get a lower percent right now, and then at the end of the day, we're going to be above. So I don't think hydro rates are going down.
Yeah, we approved them. 34 was 53, 34 was 50.
It's 3,000.
Don't forget that they're,
35.
So as of today, we're at $35,000 for hydro. So if you kind of break it up into quarters, I mean, 50 seems to be the number that we're going to be using this year.
Okay. I'm just asking.
Yeah, no,
My last question pertains obviously to the officers that you're requesting. Last year, didn't we approve a budget that would allow you to hire 2 new officers?
no.
So last year we ended up approving, sorry, Mark, you may be able to assist me. Was it 5.5 or 6%? Is that correct?
That's correct, Deputy Mayor. 6%.
6%. And wasn't some of that increase supposed to go towards the officers last year?
No.
We didn't get the grants.
Sorry, I thought it was.
I think there's a little confusion. We approve the budget. We can't approve where it's spent. So once the board or the police services have the money, it's up to them to apply it where they want. So if they deemed enough money in there to last year, okay, sorry, we're just clarifying the amount. It was 6%. Once they get the money, it's up to them how they use it. So same thing with today's budget. They're requesting 7.6%. If we approve it, they do what they want. If we don't approve it and we approve a lesser amount, I'll just say 6% like we did last year, it's still up to the chief and his administrative staff to spend it where they want. So whether they want to buy a car, they want to buy extra body cameras or hire officers, that's up to them. We can't tell them what to do with the money.
Okay, so I guess that's part of my concern right now, because I know that was a very large part of our conversation last year, was the hiring of additional officers. And then we had the confusion around grants, which I know we were not successful getting. So that puts me in a bit of a position right now, looking at another very large increase. How do we know we're going to get the staff that you're discussing now, when last year this was something you brought up? Part of your conversation last year was the same thing, saying we haven't hired in so many years, we need to start adding to the complement, and we didn't. that 6% went towards whatever it went towards. I'm not sure. So that's my concern as of right now, is we're looking for a very large increase. 7% is 7 point whatever it is very large increase, not knowing exactly where it's going or exactly what's coming to us this year with COVID, the unknown surrounding it, and how it's going to affect our municipality in the next 6 months to a year. So those are my concerns as of right now.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. Any other questions?
Vicky, so another question around what Crystal's question was. So the new officers that we had the swearing in ceremony for, were they not new officers that were hired?
No,
Is that-
they were replacements.
Okay, so it wasn't in addition to the complement, it was just replacing, okay.
That's
And
correct.
then I have a question on page 11 around information technology. So the approved budget was 102,000. The actual is only 37,000. And then in 2021 requesting 104,000, just wondering.
Okay, I'm just gonna have Kevin speak briefly on that, Vicky.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry, Vicky, could you just repeat the question for me?
So on page 11,
Yep.
information technology,
Right.
the approved budget was at 102,000.
Yep.
Requested for 2021 is 104,000.
Yep.
But the actuals for 2020 are just over 37,000.
Yes.
And just wondering what the rationale as to why it's still looking for that much. Is it something that wasn't spent because of COVID or?
No, it's a great question. The reason is, if you recall, during our deliberations, we were replacing our records management system with a Versaterm. We've been working very diligently with Windsor Police. Yesterday I received another update on it. We have project timeline for implementation, and our target date is for December of 2020. So that money will be spent. But they had to do some preliminary things behind the scenes with Versaterm themselves, and in preparation for us to onboard with them. So the bulk of that money will be spent in December. It's just they just obviously haven't billed us to this point yet. So that will certainly be recognized by December.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
So Vicky, that cost, which is, I just got it in yesterday, the guesstimate, if the board recalls, in our submission for the 2020 was this RMS system that we were going to be doing, and that bill is going to come in around $70,000. I should by the $76,000 by mid-December.
Okay, I was just hoping that maybe there was a savings there.
And just a question, is that capital cost or ongoing annual cost?
It's a annual cost.
Annual.
Our system in the past was with an American company. We've had this partnership with an American company for, 21 years. And it's just grown old and tired. I think we kind of covered this and we were lagging behind in some legislative requirements to do business with our big partners. One is the RCMP. There's certain requirements. This RMS system will meet all our legislated concerns and issues, and certainly provide what we need to give on a going forward basis with respect to all the bells and whistles that this new RMS provides.
So Mark, just a further question on that. So each year from here on in, we'll see that cost to be roughly $100,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, the cost, so as you can see in the years past, so with the new RMS, we're probably going to see an additional, I don't know, $15,000 a year cost. And because we're sort of piggybacking with Windsor, a lot of our IT costs with respect to RMS are no longer our problem. It comes with the package that we're going to be entering with the Windsor Police.
No, but Chief, just going forward, our costs will be in that $100,000 a year range.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, give or take a couple.
Okay, and going back 5 years ago, what was the cost associated with that line? Was it 50,000, 60,000? What was it in previous years, please?
I think about 80,000, 82,000.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Can I just clarify one thing?
Mark, just a further question. The
Yes.
3 additional officers, what's the schedule for having them come on board?
Well, if the board, we have to make a submission by, I think it's by Tuesday. Because you got to remember that the basic training has been put off for most of this year. So everybody's scrambling to get their names in the hat. Once their budgets are approved, names have to be submitted, or I'm sorry, not names. Positions required have to be submitted to the college in order to firm up our position. I'm glad, and not everybody has their budgets at this point of the game or this early in the year, but there's only so many positions, and there's most services have been unable, like us or anybody else, to fulfill their commitment with the college.
And so when will those 3 individuals actually hit the payroll of the LaSalle Police Services Board?
January. There is an intake in January.
Okay, and if in fact we have a placeholder in there and we decide that we're not going to go ahead with it because something's happened in November or December, is there a cancellation of the placeholder?
There is, but we forfeit. There's no guarantee that we'll get those spots later.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Appreciate that.
If I can just say, it's just so what's happening, Marty, because of the COVID thing, they've kind of revamped typically an officer would go there and stay there for 3 months, okay? And come home on weekends if they can, depending on where they're coming from. But today they've kind of shortened, and they're allowing to do some of the work back at their base, and kind of shorten the 12-week training to I think it's 8 or 9 weeks, and some of the weeks have been shortened.
6 days.
Yeah, so, or not shortened, but they're sort of compacting more training days in a week than they did, so they can shorten the overall typical 3 months duration or tenure.
Okay. And is Tanya there?
Where?
She.
Yeah, I'm here.
She's here.
So Tanya, is there any way that you have quick access to the minutes of the meeting that we approved the budget for last year?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
And it would be, could you maybe quickly get that for us, or
Yep, I've got it pulled up here.
because I have a similar memory to what Crystal does. Is I thought that we approved the budget and that included the hiring of 2 additional officers.
Well, it was just the 6% increase that was approved. But like the chair said, we can't advise on what they spend their money on.
Did you hear
No.
that?
Yes, I did, but the whole discussion, chief and deputy chief, that centered around that increased budget was because, like, I guess it's a point where we don't capture the details of the discussion. But chief, you came to us last year, didn't you? And you asked for 2 additional officers,
Oh, yes, I did.
right? So why, I guess the point would be, if you asked us for the 2 additional officers and there was tremendous amount of discussion on this, we approved the budget, assuming that the 2 additional officers would be hired. What happened? Did that get turned down at council, or what happened? Because we did not reduce the budget. We had a really, I think it was an in-camera session, Mark, that we had a real in-depth discussion without, I think it was without the chief and the deputy chief there, or maybe they were there. And in the end, we decided to go with the total amount of what the chief and the deputy chief were asking for, did we not?
I was in the hiring process. I had to terminate the hiring process because of the 6%. There were no funds in that budget to hire 2 people.
No, but who gave, chief, who told you you had to do that? See, I'm just trying to get the whole discussion was last year you asked us for a 6% or 6.2% increase, and that included the hiring of 2 additional officers. And you actually gave us a time frame, and you said you were going to be able to go to the college with placeholders with this same discussion. And we went at it. Is this just my memory, or is it anybody else recall this? And we went at it real hard. And in the end, I think, I'm sorry to do this, but I was the one who stuck my neck out and said, look, it's been such a long time since this happened. And Mark, I know you were, you didn't, maybe, and I'm just putting, you didn't like that very much. And I said, look, we got to give the chief and the deputy chief the ability to beef up. And we approved that. I think I was the one that really spoke in favor of it and said, look, the chief deserves this. So I'm kind of, I don't know what to do here, guys. I apologize for this.
Well, I don't want to say I was upset. I might not have agreed with the budget amount. It's not the amount of officers, but regardless of what went on then, we have to clarify. You're right. So now we're at the point of the budget amount again. What he does with that amount, I say he respectfully. If I can just ask a question before we continue. I'm looking at the actuals for 2020. And my assumption is, because there's no dates on this budget was prepared in September. So if you look at 2020 actuals on page 14.
Somebody get that for me?
Okay. The actuals are 3,411,000 for round numbers. So we're roughly at 45%. I'm just rounding up, rounding down, whatever. We're at 45% of the budget spent so far, but we're at 67% of our time frame. So usually, to make a simple example, if we're at the end of June and our budget is 5 million, we should have spent 2.5 million other than overtime, et cetera, at the year end. But there's over 20% discrepancy between actuals and approved budget. So are we going to have a big surplus year end? Because I don't see that much overtime being 20% of 7 million. It's $1.5 million.
So the board gets a monthly report from finance, and they get into the trending, and they get into the various categories that are laid out in my memo. If you read Tono's report, we are trending and tracking towards simply a balanced budget. When you see these monies, there's always payouts at the end of the year. All the specialty pays, all their 40 hours of overtime that's carried over is paid out. At this point, and I agree with Tono, it's just looking like to be a balanced budget. I mean, if I do have a few coins left over, make no mistake, we have to continuously replace our tasers. We have to we're trying to get a price on putting more of these electronic speed signs. If we, that are about like $1,700 each. We're trying to see if we can maybe squeeze a couple of those in there, if that allows me in the fall, if there's a few dollars left over. But in terms of I as it looks right now, and in conjunction with the report from finance, we're tracking to be just a balanced budget.
Okay, thanks. Do you know, Chief, is this the actuals? Are they end of August?
Nah,
No, I think July.
I think July, Your Worship.
Okay. Thank you. So we're I guess we're back to whether it's police officers or not, where we're at with the budget. You're proposing 7.6%.
7.6%.
I just want to remind Chief on one point.
Yeah.
Whatever we approve today, whatever that number is, it still has to go to council. We recommend to council the recommendation, and that council meeting won't be prior to Tuesday. Just to make you aware of that.
I know.
Okay. That's why we tried to hurry up and get this budget meeting in order. We could have delayed it, and I said, no, let's get it back to them as soon as we can, whatever that budget is. But I just want to remind everyone that whatever we do approve still has to go to town council to approve this.
So Mark, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go back to, so are you saying that if in fact that we make this recommendation to council, that there's still a chance that we can't put in there subject to the fact that the increase is required to hire 3 additional officers, and the new chief coming in or the new deputy chief or whoever is here doing this can say, well, I'm not going to hire the officers. I'm going to use that money for something else?
The short answer to that, Mr. Combs, is you're correct. We cannot put that stipulation. We just approve the budget, whatever that percentage is, and it's up to the chief to put that where he wants. So the chief could, hypothetically, we approve the 7.6. He wants to hire some, and then the new chief, his replacement, comes in end of March and says, no, I don't want that. I don't need 3. Or he might say, I need 2 more. We don't know. So to your answer, short answers, we cannot put stipulations. We only approve the budget.
And we can't get the chief and or the deputy chief to swear on the Catholic Bible that they're going to use that to hire officers?
That's correct. We can't do that.
What about on the Protestant Bible? Okay, you made your point, Mr. Mayor. I understand.
Okay, Mrs. Malash.
Through you to the chief again. So my question would surround the grants that happened last year. I know we were lost out on several that we were expecting. So that's what you're saying is why we didn't hire. You're telling me that was 6% that we didn't receive, and that's why we didn't hire. So my concern for this year is at 7.6%, are there any grants listed in here that we may not get?
No.
No. Are there any outstanding grants that we may get that could assist us, but are, again, not listed in this budget? Because obviously, we don't have to.
We're just in the process of writing the grant, the very grant we've been unsuccessful with last year. I have no idea. I mean, if on the last meeting, we were notified 8 months later I think it was 8 months later that we were unsuccessful. So we're in the process of writing another grant. And I don't know.
It's not included in our.
And it's not included in here because it hasn't been submitted, and then we're still trying to figure out the best approach shot to take. I'm not hopeful, but we're gonna do our best.
I appreciate that because I know that was a lot of our confusion last year were these grants that were in the budget and obviously we didn't get, which now that 6% that we did approve ended up, I guess, kind of absorbing that loss.
Well, we don't qualify, Deputy Mayor. We're not qualifying for the criteria that they're setting out. These grants that are being, the few of them, I mean, this is the first one that came out since last spring. I mean, in all my years here, we've always had something come out, and in fact, the last officer that we added to complement was the grant 11 years ago. So, but the criteria is based around the GTA. It's built, it's kind of written around Peel and Ottawa and Niagara region. These small to mid-size police services, we're not very successful. It's not just us. Most of the funding is going to the GTA.
I understand. Like I said, I just wanted to be sure that that wasn't going to affect what we approved this year the way it did last year.
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Crystal, can I get clarification of something you just said? I just want to, maybe I missed it earlier, but so the reason why we didn't hire the additional officers is because we didn't get the grants?
That's what I got from Chief earlier when he was discussing, actually Deputy Chief, I heard him in the background say we didn't get the approval of the grants, which is why we didn't have the funds to hire.
Is that the official reason why we didn't hire?
No.
If I can jump in here, Tanya just found the minutes of the meeting,
So,
of the report from the meeting. So I'll just read
yeah,
that.
if I can just say, so the memo that's submitted November the 5th, 2019
We couldn't hit the,
is at 7.9%.
which wasn't approved. We couldn't.
And did the 7.9% include the 2 additional officers?
Yes, but then it was turned down, and I was directed to go back and bring it down to 6%. And that memo was dated October the 24th. You'll have a copy of it.
So the 1.5% change or whatever that was,
Almost
eliminated
2%.
the concept of hiring the 2 additional officers?
It's almost 2%, yes.
We couldn't fulfill that 6%.
I couldn't fulfill that with 6%.
I'm just going to read you the. This is just a public memorandum that was dated February 14th. I won't read the whole memorandum, but basically it says, on October 24th, 2019, I presented the board a revised budget with 6% increase. That's John's memo and co-signed by Deputy Chief. 123,000 was trimmed to arrive at 6%. 2 additional officers were not removed from the budget. So that's your letter to the board on February 14th. You're saying 2 additional officers were not removed. So it's just, again, it verifies what we discussed is that we approved the budget, but it's spent per the chief and administration, his administrative on how to spend it. I hope that clarifies it.
Well, it clarifies the fact that they were not removed from the budget.
Right, which means they're in the budget based on his words to hire 2 officers.
So in the minutes.
Oh, just a minute, I'm getting more.
So the minutes, because his recommendation was approve the recommended 2020 budget. The recent review of the budget with the finance department allows the hiring of 2 officers. And the board in the minutes denied
We,
this recommendation.
Bottom left.
that's just the budget, not the officers.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Mhm.
Sorry, Tanya's just reading something from other minutes. I just want to make sure we're clear. Is that the board or council?
It just says that that report from February be denied. So the board denied that report, like the recommendation that was in the report.
What was the recommendation?
A recent review of the budget with the finance department allows the hiring of 2 officers in 2020. One must meet the legislative.
Okay,
requirements.
so she's clearing up. I'll just let her read it rather than me try to take it from her. If you could, let me know if you can't hear. Okay, I have it. Okay, so this is further that from February 14th from the chief, that the initial submission to the budget, this is the same one. That,
Yeah, but the recommendation.
yeah,
Denied.
here's the recommendation. A recent review of the budget with the finance department allows the hiring of 2 officers in 2020. One must meet the legislative requirements pursuant to Section 4.1 Police Services Act, providing adequate and effective services, but that was denied. So the report was denied. But it doesn't, the report means we're not approving the recommendation, but again, it's still up to administration, the chief, to do what he wants with the budget. I hope I didn't muddy the waters there.
We need to talk about the margin.
Well, yeah, I'm still a little bit unclear, but according to what the February 14th meeting, the memo, we concurred with the chief hiring 2 additional officers, and the chief agreed to that, right?
Well, the recommendation was denied to hire 2 additional officers, but the budget was approved at 6%. We can't technically, well, did we vote on that? Or that's just a letter from the chief?
No, that you guys voted on it. That the report be,
How can we vote on something that we don't have control over?
that the.
Okay, that's his letter to us, but what did we do with it? No, we had to- Sorry, a second.
Mhm. Yeah, the minutes say it's be there. Mhm.
Where did they deny it?
Denied it because your recommendation.
Where does it say denied it?
Within the 6% budget.
2020.
So
Okay, so just to add confusion here.
in the minutes of the meeting
March.
of the March, in the
March
March meeting, C.1, that the recommendation in the memorandum dated the 14th of February 2020 for Chief Leontowicz, the hiring process be denied.
So who gave, the board did that or council?
Board.
The board did that. I'm just looking at the minutes. I didn't think we had authority for that. Tanya's reading the rest of the report. Sorry.
It's on page 2 of the minutes, C1.
Okay.
So-
Well, go ahead, Marty.
Well, no, so either we do have authority or we don't have authority.
We do, and that's what we're clarifying, but we believe we do not have authority. So I don't know how we voted on something that we don't have authority. That's something we'll have to look into. I mean, we can't go back retroactively, but we can only deal with what we're dealing with today.
Did we just vote on receive of the report?
No.
No, that's specifically, we denied the hiring of 2 officers. That was the motion that was voted. Okay, that was last year.
Yeah, so, sorry, so basically, and again, Chief, I just needed clarification on this. So basically, either we concurred with the chief's report or we told the chief he couldn't hire the 2 additional officers, but he still got the 6% increase in his budget. Okay? And that's what the chief said. So I think it's important that we all understand that going forward into the 2021 budget. And I think we just need clarification from somebody on whether or not, if we approve this 2021 budget, whether or not we have the authority to say, chief, or whoever is the new chief is in place, or however, the 3 additional officers must be hired.
If Your Worship, may I?
Yes.
So what Marty is saying here is let's just assume for a moment. Let's just assume for a moment that the board approves the budget, subject to council approval. If the board strongly believes that this request is a must, and council turns it down, I'm going to quote to you what you have and or I have at our disposal. The Minister of the Solicitor General has a responsibility to monitor police services to ensure that adequate and effective police services are provided at the municipal level. Section 3A of the Police Services Act. In addition, the Ontario Civilian Police Commission may investigate the policing needs of the municipality subject to 25D of the Police Services Act, should concerns be raised regarding adequate and effective policing. You have a very strong basis, and I have no problem defending that. If you truly believe that that the request that we're making today and discussion we're taking today, this is what you have at your disposal. This is what I have at my disposal. So there are times in the province when that happens. And I can tell you after 21 years here, that has never happened. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but 21 years as chief, that has never happened. But if it does happen, you do have the authority to go to and have the ministry come in, and they're going to look at the paperwork and they're going to look at everything. And then you'll be fine. I'm telling you, I am 99% convinced that you'll be fine.
Thanks, Chief. Looks like Mr. Allen has a question.
No, I guess I would just say that if the board approves the 7.9 and it has to go to council for actual, or recommends 7.9, and it goes to council for approval, whatever that date is. What was the date of the next council meeting? Would it go then?
Yes, I believe we'd be on the agenda for the 2nd Tuesday of October.
Second Tuesday. But the chief also said that he had to put his placeholders in by Tuesday.
Correct.
So there's nothing that stops the police chief from putting his placeholders in place on Tuesday. The budget goes to, or the recommendation goes, whatever it is, goes to council. Council can make adjustments to those numbers and approve it. Is that the way it works?
Yes.
May I, Your Worship?
Yes.
Council can only approve or not approve your recommendation.
Sorry, I should have been clear on that. Correct.
They cannot direct the Police Services Board how they spend their money. They can only say yay or nay to the bottom line. And the sections I've just quoted you, if you choose to take a position, you may take a position with council based on those legal proceedings I've just shared with you. But all council can do is yes or no. That's it. They can't even get into, well, how come can't you get away with no cars this year and all this sort of this and that? Right. They can't. They don't have any authority to enter into the day-to-day activities of the services via the board.
Correct. Just for clarification purposes, Mr. Allen, it's not 7.9, it's 7.6.
Sorry. Well, that helps.
Okay, I just want to, if somebody's viewing this on YouTube, they might say, who said 7.9? It's 7.6. So just to clarify.
I just want to make sure everybody was awake.
Okay. We're listening. Okay, so we have before you the budget.
But, so Mark, just, it's
Yes.
something Chief just said is very, very important.
Okay.
Chief, with what you just said about council, so if we go to council with the 7.6% increase, they can either approve or not approve it.
Correct.
And if they don't approve it, it's back with us, right?
Correct.
However, can you clarify what Mark said? Does our board have the authority, forget about council now, but does our board have the authority to tell you what you can do and you can't do with that money?
No, the board approves the budget. The board approves the budget. The budget as submitted by the chief. And if you approve 7.6%, I have 3 items in here other than day-to-day costs. I have 3 items. I can only hire 3 people if there's $300,000 left at the end of the year. I can't hire a 4th person. I can't do that. I don't have that financial authority because you didn't give me that financial authority.
But if and this is very important, if we, at least it is to me, sorry, but so if these 3 additional items that are, in addition to last year's budget, if they're included in this year's 2021 budget, Chief, do you have the authority not to proceed with those 3 items and use the money elsewhere?
No, I do not have that authority.
Okay, so that's a little different, Mark, than what I think you said, right?
Well, yeah, we're just reading that, and it says we cannot advise the chief in day-to-day operations. It doesn't specifically say where he can spend the money or not, but I say if we can't tell him day-to-day, if he buys a car within the budget or hires an officer within the budget, I'm reading it that way, that we cannot tell him what to do with the approved budget.
Okay, I respect your opinion on that. Yep, thank you.
Now,
So-
what the sections?
It's Vicky.
31.4, just that's what we're reading in the act. So
So
we interpret it. Go ahead, Vicky.
I agree we can't go into the day-to-day operational piece of it, but we're approving a budget that clearly outlines specific costs related to specific items. I don't think the chief has the authority to then go and say, well, I'm not going to hire the 3 officers that were put in the budget, and instead I'm going to go and purchase X, Y, and Z because we did not approve that.
That is absolutely correct, Vicky.
Okay.
And if I've been doing it wrong, I've been doing it wrong for 21 years.
And so have we with provincial money.
Well, Vicky, there was a time, there were years where, I mean, we would get monies for this and that, and but it's been it's been 11 years. And even, I don't want to go there, but it's I don't know what the town's going through, but for smaller mid level, just the way they craft the criteria makes it almost impossible to get some of these grants because we just don't have the meat and potatoes that Toronto has.
Okay, Marty, sorry. It seems to be, we're trying to find clarification. I don't know if it's the exact verbiage is in there, but Okay, so I'll just read you what Tanya just found in the act, but it still may be to what Vicky stated in relation to spending that money. Which one? Okay. Upon receiving the estimates, the council shall establish an overall budget for the board for the purposes described in clauses 1A and B. And in doing so, the council is not bound, wait, no, that's not the one. Not bound to adopt. You sure it's not 3? Which one?
Number
4. Sorry, reading the wrong one. In establishing an overall budget for the board, council does not have the authority to approve or disapprove specific items in the estimates. So that says council. I'm assuming that's town council, not the board.
Right, yeah.
Okay. That's town.
But yeah, but Mark, you know what? Your interpretation of what the police services board, you know what? That could be construed, or sorry, I could construe that as being, I agree with you, okay? But you know, if the chief and the deputy chief go out and again promise us to do this, that's a whole different issue. But Mark, I totally agree with you. I see where you're coming from.
Okay, Marty, so do you want them to promise on a Catholic or Protestant Bible?
Orthodox, please.
Okay.
So Chief, I have one more question and then I'll shut up. Chief, is there any way that you might be able to stagger the hiring process and do 2 this October and maybe 1 in the spring, and save a little bit of money in that and still fulfill your requirements?
He's muted.
You're muted, Chief.
Good thing you didn't hear that.
Chief, you're not allowed to swear until you're retired.
No, I have my hand on the Catholic Bible, and right now it's getting very warm. So I got to be very quick with my response. The simple answer is, in the best interest of the safety of my frontline officers, if the board approves this, I can guarantee you Kevin and I are going to have those 3 people in place, ready to go to the college, unless COVID goes, precludes us or precludes the college from carrying out its duties. I want those 3, I would humbly request those 3 new officers yesterday.
I will just add this. What you're requesting on the overall budget, and Crystal and I represent all of the municipality, as we do as Police Services Board, but from a budget perspective, this is a 2% hit to the overall budget. And the police represent maybe 25% of our overall budget, but we're going to be hit with 2%. I only say that because I don't know what council is going to say, because for the last 2 years, we've had a 0% mill rate increase on the taxes.
Over the year, it's been, when we had the issues with the water, I would go out to Senator Street and Juanita, and I'd go out there and I'd talk to the folks, and they, please, why can't you guys have your boat out here? Look what they're doing to our properties, this, that, the next thing. And all I can tell them is I'll do everything that I can. I had a conversation with a couple of local farmers, and both of them say, you know what, these ATVs are ruining our crops. They're in there. And I said, I'll tell you what, folks, I'll do everything that I can. So, and that's just those 2 things. Now, I think you folks know that the trails and the parks are like, I've never seen them. I'm on the trails every other day with my bike, and I'm telling you, those trails are busy with people walking, people riding their bikes and rollerblading, this, that, the next thing. There's there's a lot of people on these trails as the population increases. And we need to have a presence there. But most of all, if there is a firefight in downtown LaSalle and there's nobody there and there's just one officer there because we're tied up in the hospital or we're tied up with another matter, I can't stress that risk needs to be addressed.
I have no disagreement with anything you said. And everything you mentioned, I've heard. I've heard the voices on Senator. I've heard the voices on Juanita. I've heard the voices from those farmers. And I'm out in that area where those ATVs are. So I see it, and there's nothing you said I don't agree with. But playing the devil's advocate, people are going to say to me, why are you raising my taxes for the safety of officers, which no one's going to deny the officers should be safe, when you're the 9th safest community in Canada? Yes, we have the lowest complement of officers per population, but I'm just going to say, when they come to us and say, you're approving 2% tax increase on my policing, regardless of what happens with the other side of the budget, which we don't know yet because administration is working on it. Yes, I've been pushing for 0%. That's not going to happen. If we approve this budget, it's going to be 2 plus, maybe just 2, but it might be 2 plus 2. And we're at 4%. And that's up to council to approve it. So I'm only giving you the other side, because if it was just me and I had to spend my money, it doesn't matter what I say as Mark Bondi or as Crystal Malash, but as representing 33,000 people, we're spending their money, not our money. So I'm just giving you the other side to this. As relating to the trails, totally agree. I'm on the trails. Every morning I go for a walk. Not many people at 5:30 in the morning, but that's where I'm at. Is this COVID related? Will this cease or decrease in activity when we get rid of COVID? Will the number of calls with marriage disputes, I think you said there was, I forget all the calls that the deputy chief mentioned, domestic disputes, domestic violence, drugs, will that decrease significantly? So, I'm not suggesting this, but I don't want to knee jerk and hire 3. And then the new chief comes in and goes, wow, I got extra people. This is good. I can do more VIP. I can do more trail system. I can do more waterways, but the waterway complaints are not coming if water recedes. That's the only reason why we're getting those complaints, because of the high water levels and the wakes are hitting people's homes. So just giving you the other side of the coin, that if we act, I agree, but are we overreacting? Do we need 3? Can we go with 2 or 1? So I'm just throwing out there what the other council members may bring to me, and or residents for that matter. So I guess now it's up to the board. We either approve the budget as presented or propose something different. I didn't say it was going to be an easy decision. Just for council's or board's info, I did some math. Approving the budget as is a 7.6% increase. 3 officers at 82,700 is, for round numbers, 250,000, which would be taking, I'm assuming, not assuming anything. If you take that off the budget proposal, it would be a 4.4% increase over last year's budget, which is approximately 1% increase on the town's overall budget. Just giving you all the information, hopefully help you make a decision.
Did you say that again?
The cost for 3 officers that was given to finance department is roughly $248,100.
So that's with that on, it's at the 7.6.
Correct.
Okay, take it away.
4.4. Those are not my numbers. Those were given to me by the finance department. So I trust their math.
When does council finally approve the overall budget for the municipality, Mark?
December. The exact date, I think, is the second week in December. Usually Wednesday and Thursday. I'll see if I have the dates here. Yeah.
So I take it, Chief and Deputy Chief, if you receive approval of this, then you go to the college, you put a placeholder, and you start the recruitment process so that you can have somebody at the college in January. Is that correct?
The recruitment process is a lengthy project. The hiring process would start probably within the next week and a half. It takes that long because there's so many things steps that they have to go through. It usually takes about 6 weeks to go through the hiring process. So what we would do is we would reserve those positions at the college, commence the hiring process, and then within 10 days for sure, and then we would just put them in a holding pattern pending the outcome of council. I wouldn't have the time to do it, between our first part of December and first week of January. It takes, so first of all, so it's quite a process to,
When does the police college start?
First week in January, third week in May.
January the 8th or 9th is the intake.
Crystal,
Okay,
okay, sorry, Marty, go ahead. Then Crystal.
No, Crystal has a question. That's good.
Okay, Crystal?
So I'm having a problem with the timelines because you're saying next week, but this doesn't go into council until December the 16th. So what happens if you go out and hire on December 16th? Mark and I are 2 of 7. The rest of council says, no, we deny the request for the increase.
Yeah.
And it comes back to us. What now happens if we've hired these officers?
Same as last year. We had them in a holding pattern and the holding pattern terminated. So the process takes about 6 weeks per candidate. So we would just go through the process, get these people to that level, and then wait for the word, wait for the final approval.
I guess my question to you would be, would it be more beneficial of us to look at the May start date for the college, which would not make this not a rush, would allow us to go to council, get the approval from council in January, February, start the new process of hiring, or maybe the new chief goes through that process. That there would mean we wouldn't start until May, what would cut some of this $250,000 off of the budget that's put in front of us. Would that be something that you would consider instead of a January start, more of a May start?
Well, after 11 years, I think it's time we just move on this, and we move on initiating what needs to be done. It's not the first time that we prioritize these people on a list, Deputy Mayor. We just put them on a list. So then, if it's a green light, they get the hook, and we're ready to go. It can be done now. It can be done, and if it doesn't work, they remain on a list or on a priority list for 1 year. Then the list is terminated. So we're not hiring them. We're just going through the process of it to, between medical and psych tests and interviews and background checks, and it's a time-consuming thing, and so.
So Mark, at this point in time, do you mind if I make a motion? just to get things rolling here.
It's entirely in your right and privilege to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we instruct the chief of police to put a placeholder at the college for 3 additional for 3 placements beginning in January, and that we defer approval of this budget going to council for 10 days until such time as we call another meeting of the Police Services Board to discuss this further.
Okay. I get the first part. I don't get the reasoning of the second part, but
Well, let me see if there's a seconder to that, and then I'll
Okay.
talk to it.
Well, I'll second it for discussion purposes.
Yeah,
Perfect.
And
okay, moved by Marty. I'm just taking notes. Tanya had to leave for a second. Marty and Mr. Allen second. Okay.
And the reason for this is I am really sympathetic to the chief and to the deputy chief's position on this, and so I know what they're going through. I'm not saying I was ever in that position before, but I'm sympathetic, and I truly believe that it's time that we, as I said last year, and I'll continue to say it, we need some additional officers, whether it's 2 or 3, that's fine. I trust the chief and the deputy chief. However, we've had a really, really good discussion on this, and it's been an in-depth discussion. In my mind, I just need about 2 weeks to think about this, to take a step back. And it seems like me that the urgency is not to go to council with the budget, because the council is not going to approve the budget anyways. The urgency of this is to give some direction to the chief and the deputy chief to put a placeholder at the college. And I like that plan, but I really need a couple of weeks and one more meeting of, let's say, another half an hour discussion on this, so that I can think about this for the next 2 weeks. That's all it is. And chief, I don't want you or deputy chief just to think that I'm against it, but I just need to take a step back in this.
Okay. Tanya came back in. So if I'm clear, you want to instruct the chief to place 3 placeholders to start the process, but reconvene a meeting in 2 weeks.
Within 2 weeks to have a further discussion on this whole budget.
Okay. So we have a mover and a seconder on the motion. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Second item on the agenda, LaSalle Police Services Board 2021 budget. Pretty simple, 4.05 increase.
Are we off, your worship?
Yes, yes, you can go. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, folks.
Okay.
All right, Kevin.
Okay. On the LaSalle Police Services Board budget, I just want to, they're off, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you might see on the bottom of, right, there's a line item in respect to the recruitment of a new chief. We just put in an approximate amount, last line on the page, proposal 1. Just so you're aware of that in case everybody didn't see it clearly. So pretty straightforward budget, nothing. The only part for me to highlight was that. Any questions, concerns, comments? None? Board's pleasure?
I'll move it.
Moved by Mr. Allen. Seconded by Mrs. Malash. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. And now, do they stay on? Do they have to log out? Oh, sorry. Have to adjourn the meeting. So meeting adjourned. As far as technical,
Okay, I stopped the live.